tell you about what's going on in my family, things my father is doing, you don't know what it is.
No.
Would that be the kind of case where you would say, well, raise it first with your father?
Well, there's possibly not enough information for me to comment on that. I don't recall that conversation. If it occurred, I'm not denying that she did.
Just Mr. Charlie, you're being asked something else. You're being asked a hypothetical question. Assume that you were told what she says she told you. What's your response?
If I were to assume that that's what she told me, what you're asking, what would my reaction be?
Yes.
If she needed help, if it was in that situation, I would provide the help. I would talk to the father.
Well, there's a couple of steps there. She says that she said she wanted to talk to you. Now, if a young female member of the congregation says she wants to talk to you about things in my family, would you talk to her?
Yes, yes, I
would.
would.
You require her to talk to her father first if she said she wanted to talk to you about what her father was doing?
No, I said she would be quite welcome to express whatever her concerns were.
So just to be clear, if we, the Commissioner and I, accept that she said these things to you, that she wanted to talk to you, and you didn't talk to her, then you didn't do what you should have done. Is that right?
That would be true, yes.
Well, you need an opportunity to reflect, but she says she said this to you.
I'm not denying that what she's saying. I'm simply saying that I don't remember this happening.
Well, she says that having raised the question with you, you said, no, you have to talk to your father first. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
Well, you have no recollection of that either.
No, I don't have a recollection.
If we accept her evidence, it means that you have not spoken with her when in response to her request, doesn't it?
I don't see it that way, Your Honour.
Well, she says she wants to talk to you and you say no. You have to talk to your father first.
Well, I don't have a recollection of her saying that, and I'm not saying that I'm denying that that's something that she may have assumed that I said or that she said. It's just that I have no recollection to comment on that.
But if we accept that you had this conversation, then you declined to speak with her. Isn't that right?
No, I don't think that would be correct to say that either.
Well, what does the word no mean?
No. Well, when I say no, if I wouldn't have said no to talk to her. That's what I don't recollect having said anything. I don't recollect that BCG with this conversation. So,
did you talk to her about problems with her father?
I can't recollect that I did.
Something you would recollect, isn't it?
Well, one would hope so, and I wish I could, because I understand the gravity of what she was going through as we continue to look into that. And I appreciate the situation afterwards more so, and in retrospect, you know, it's things that, there are certain things that stick more often in memory than others. And to me, it was her going through that situation, very serious situation, and explaining herself afterward during the judicial case, that I got to appreciate the depth of her concern.
You mean it was only when the matter went to court that you understood the serious nature of the events that had happened?
No, it was well before that. It was when the motions we started to go through, when it became something that was clearly a real victimisation of a young person by her parent, that all of us elders then acted very swiftly in dealing with that situation. Now, this may have been a prelude to that. I don't know. I cannot recollect this particular discussion. But
Well,
the other things...
We'll come to what you did do in response to what you knew, but is it right to understand that the teaching of your church requires someone who has a disagreement with another member of the congregation to first of all seek to put matters right with that other person?
That would be the first step.
So what BCG says in her statement about her conversation with you and your response is consistent with the teaching of the church. Is that right?
It should be, yes. But
it's the response that she says you made, as I understand it, from what you've told me, is consistent with the teachings of the church. That is, no, you have to talk to your father first.
Again, well, Your Honour, I'm sorry, but I can't recollect that.
No, come back. What she says you said, as I understand it, is consistent with the teachings of the church. That is, you've got to speak to your father first.
Generally, if it was something of a minor concern, yes.
Well, you don't know from this conversation whether it's major or minor. So do I then understand that what you're saying to us is that what she reports you as having said is consistent with the teachings of the church?
I would have to think very carefully on that whole aspect, because if I could remember the rest of a conversation that one might have, then perhaps I can comment, but I cannot recall.
Well, I'm sorry,
this having happened.
I have to put it to you again. We're just looking at the conversation that she says occurred. Now, you may not remember it, but that's what she says happened. What I want to know is whether that conversation, as she records it from you, is consistent with the teachings of the church, and that is, no, you've got to talk to your father first.
If this did really happen, I'm not doubting that it did, then it would be consistent with myself to follow through and have a discussion with her, and to also approach the parent if it was of something of concern, yes.
I'm lost. She says you said, no, you have to talk to your father first. Now, as I understand it from what you've already told me, a statement such as that by you is consistent with the teachings of the church.
It would be, yes, definitely.
Now, do you recall, Mr. Ally, how you first became aware of allegations being made by BCG that her father had sexually assaulted her?
I thought it was through another elder who brought it to their attention that these things had come to our attention, so we needed to act on that.
And who was that other elder?
I believe it may have been Kevin.
Well, do you remember who it was?
Not offhand.
Is it not the case that these allegations were brought to your attention by someone else in the congregation who was a friend of BCG, who has a pseudonym in these proceedings, BCJ? There should be a list in front of you which will give you who BCJ is. Was it not that person, without saying his name? Was it not him who raised these matters with you?
Possibly it could have been.
It may have been.
Possibly.
And then you would, if it was, you would then have raised that with the other elders, is that right?
Yes.
And sitting there now, do you recall what it is that was said to you as to what BCG's allegations were?
As a judicial beforehand, which In what context?
Well, when they were first brought to your attention.
Right.
When it was first brought to your attention through, as BCG says, BCJ, and you say, could it be? When they were first brought to your attention, do you recall what it was that was said that BCG was saying? In other words, what was the complaint? Do you remember that?
That she had been abused sexually, molested.
At that stage, in other words, what was first reported to you, were details beyond that she had been abused sexually given to you?
Not to me personally. That would have come through another elder informing the body of elders that such and such had happened, and then the action would be taken.
All right. Now, addressing then when you were informed what the allegations were in some detail, what were you informed as to what they were?
That her father had abused her, sexually abused her for some time.
Do you recall whether it was said what the nature of that abuse was?
It was on a sexual level.
You've said that already.
Yeah.
Was any more detail as to the nature of the abuse conveyed to you at that time?
That had been carried on for a while. If I recall, this may have come through after we had or were dealing with her father on another issue, that this particular charge came up. But at the moment, no, I can't recall what else would have come up.
But at least that her father had abused her sexually for some time.
Correct.
Now, in the part of your statement where you deal with generally what is supposed to happen when allegations of child sexual abuse are brought to the elders' attention, you say that the elders are immediately to call the branch office on receiving the allegation. Did that occur on this occasion?
No. That instruction came through, I think, a little bit later. As I recall, during that time that we dealt with this particular case, that wasn't something that I don't think was in the instruction about how to deal with that. The elders followed through by dealing with it promptly, though.
Right, so at that time, we're talking about approximately the middle of 1989. To your recollection, at that time, there was no standing instruction that the elders must immediately contact the branch for direction in the case of child
Not at
sexual
that
abuse.
time, no. No, that's my understanding.
Now, you've said that these allegations came to the attention of the elders. That's the three of you, as I understand it. That's you, Mr. Allen, also Mr. Bowditch and Mr. DeRoy. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, can you explain what did the three of you do with regard to those allegations?
We immediately followed through by just asking questions in a closed environment.
Asking questions of each other, Mr. Allen? Or asking questions of whom?
Of the perpetrator and of the victim herself, because we sat down and we wanted to understand exactly what had happened and her version of what the tragic circumstances were that she had faced. So I remember that she was a very brave person for her age to be able to do that, and that's something that stands out in my mind. and to explain some of those horrible things that had happened to her. So we sat together, three elders and herself. There was nobody else within that environment, and we allowed her to tell us, we allowed her time to do that. We didn't want to rush. We wanted her to tell us and explain to the extent that she could, what had happened.
And as I understand it, you asked her questions, is that right?
Only to fully understand the situation, certain situations.
And did you meet with her a number of times in that way?
I believe we did, yes.
And did you meet separately with her father?
We met with the father? Yes, yes.
Also a number of times?
A number of times.
And he denied the abuse, is that right?
Every time.
Yeah. And when you met again then with BCG, did you convey to her her father's denial?
That's right. Yeah, we informed her of that. Yeah.
And did you then seek further information or clarification from her about her allegations?
Yes, to the extent that she was able to. If there was more that she wanted to add, because it takes, I found that it took a lot more than one sitting to understand, and for her also to tell us what she'd been through.
And at that time she was about 18, is that right?
I think so, yes.
And you were about 39, is that right? Or 40?
Something like that.
And Mr. Bowditch and Mr. DeRoy, are they older than you?
No, I think Kevin is about a year or so younger, and Ron is a few years younger again.
And in those meetings that you had with BCG that you've described, did you offer to her the possibility of having someone to sit with her in support of her, someone of her choosing?
No. No, not while we were in a closed session. This was kept private first so that she could explain. It was an environment, I believed, because being a father myself and having I had 5 children, of dealing with her on a basis of that and allowing her the opportunity to say what she needed to say without any influence from anybody outside.
Mr. Ali, how many men were present at this meeting?
At that judicial committee?
No, at the initial meeting.
That would be the judicial committee.
How many were present?
3.
And only BCG?
Yes.
Did it ever occur to you that given the requirement to speak to 3 men about intimate detail in relation to her father's accusations was an entirely inappropriate task to put upon her on her own?
No, not in that time, because it wasn't that she was alone. Even though we had a closed session in a room, immediately beyond the door was her fiance, who was providing support. So we could break at any time if she felt that, look, I needed to. So recalling our sessions with her, though it was difficult to go through those, recounting that, she did rather well. I must admit, and I'm very proud of the way in which she did it. I really felt for her.
Well, you speak in those terms, but the fact of the matter is the 3 of you came to the view that there wasn't clear proof of her abuse, didn't you?
Not true. If I may just clarify that, Your Honour.
I'm just looking at your own words.
Yes, to explain that. We didn't disbelieve what had happened. We believed her. But when you have to deal with how many know of this or are aware of it, that is a different matter. If you've got two witnesses to something, or if the perpetrator had confessed to doing that, that would be sufficient. So we all three of us, believed what she was saying.
Well, then why didn't you just say so?
I believe we would have. We didn't never discount that didn't happen.
Why didn't you just say, we do accept her account, we don't accept the father's, and we act upon her account? Why didn't you do that?
Well, we have to go through the process first of letting her explain what she wanted to tell us. Then we had to follow through, because the direction is that we also need to talk to the other person and find out from your side of things what happened and why. And we needed to delve into that to get the full story of what was going on.
So much is plain, but after you'd got the full story, do you say you didn't believe her?
No.
You did?
We did believe her.
But you didn't act on that belief, did you?
Well, we couldn't, because there was only that one person who was aware or knew that happened. We did not have another person to corroborate, if you like, so that we could then deal with that situation in a way that our Bible principles allowed us to do.
You do appreciate that in most cases of sexual assault, there will only be the complainant and the alleged assaulter who are witnesses to the event. You understand that?
I am starting to, even more so now, because we have received many updates with what we can do. But at that time, this is what we believe to be the best under those circumstances.
Do you believe it now to be the best situation?
I admit that looking back, there could have been different things could have been done differently that maybe would have brought closure in some ways, yeah. I agree.
What should have been done differently?
Well, if we knew...
Should you have acted upon your belief that she had been assaulted, as she said?
If we knew then what we know now, yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if we had the evidence before us, because it's difficult to follow through with something when there is only a one-on-one. He said, she said. We're not doubting that what happened to her is true. But for us to act as shepherds, or even if we call ourselves judges in that case, on the principles of God's word, we still need what God himself has outlined, that even in any sin, serious sin, there must be two witnesses to that. So we're sorry on it, but we can't ignore divine law.
Well, the courts were quite happy, ultimately, to convict the father, correct?
Correct.
On the evidence of BCG.
And another person.
Who was a witness to the event?
A same thing happened to another in the same way, yes.
So that's accepted as corroboration?
It did. But it also got him convicted.
If there hadn't been such a person, you say you could never have reached a conclusion that BCG had been assaulted by her father.
We didn't disbelieve that it happened, but to prove it to the extent that's required by divine law, we still needed the two witnesses, or a confession would be enough to do that.
Is that the position today? It
is, but added to that is the updates received that we are guided even more so since that time, 26 years, by other things now that we can follow up with, as has been brought up here, to take that further through the legal action, which I'm glad that has come through, because it helps us as elders then to deal a lot better, and something that we can really give more help to victims of this type.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what that's all about. What's come through in later updates?
Well, the fact is that our branch now can advise what are the things that we can take, steps that we can take in a legal sense, so that we can follow through.
What do you mean?
Well, I haven't been through that, but I've been aware of the fact that now the branch has allowed us the opportunity that we have a legal department that immediately, as soon as any complaint or a sexual assault of any nature, a serious one, is made, we immediately ring the branch, asking then for the help in a legal sense. What can we do to support the victim? And we got better guidance today than we did back then.
You speak then in terms of the victim, supporting the victim. Do you mean after you've determined that the person was assaulted, or when does the person become a victim?
Well, we believe that what they say initially, but we need also to follow through in proving that we can do something with that. We would love to do something with that. And in BCG's case, we wish we had, or we could have done more. But at that time, we did not have the means to, and the help to understand as we do today, because there's been so much printed out now of the helps that can be given to victims of this sort too. And we would like to very much to have followed through with that, but we can do so today because we're aware of them now.
Do you appreciate that the criminal law doesn't require cooperation before convicting someone of sexual assault?
No, I'm still learning, Your Honour.
Yeah.
When you say you get legal direction from the branch, you mean legal in the sense of within the church's law?
We do have lawyers who are involved in law, I believe, within the branch who are qualified to do that.
Yes, so they will guide you as to what you should do within the church's rules.
And taken in, I believe, what is required by the community.
Yes, and they will tell you if there's a legal obligation to report to the police or some other authority. They'll tell you that as well.
Possibly. I have not been through that, but I believe that it's quite possible. And it's ever changing.
The position is still that the two-witness rule is applied, isn't it? You're required to apply the two-witness rule.
Generally, yes. Yes, we do. And
well,
as I explained too, that there is also the confession. If a person during our times in dealing with a particular matter, that the person admits what he has done, then we don't need two witnesses.
Yes, but if there's no confession, then you do require two witnesses. That's still the position.
We would do.
And in the light of the evidence you've already given over the last few minutes, what justification can you see for such a rule, for the two-witness rule? What justification is there for it?
Well, scripturally.
Or rationally?
Well, it is rational. Well, see, we believe rationally that divine law establishes, and it's a higher law in that respect, that from the time of Moses, for example, Deuteronomy, I believe, 19 verse 15, establishes that even the most serious sin requires not one witness, but two. And coming into the first century, that same law continued to apply. With that in mind, how can we ignore it?
Well, in the modern world where there's other forms of evidence that might be available, is there no space to revisit that rule, in your understanding?
That would be up to those who would see into that, yes. Who knows?
Mr. Ali, Mr. DeRoy, I think you say it?
DeRoy.
He was a member of your committee, wasn't he?
Yes.
Now, BCG says in her evidence that she raised with you allegations made by her younger sisters.
I can't recall that, I'm sorry.
And she says that you, that is the committee, through Mr. Roy, or DeRoy, said we won't talk to them because they're too young.
I'm not aware of that.
Well, this is what BCG says happened. And you don't remember.
No.
If it was true, then even in your terms, there was corroborative evidence being offered which you declined to accept or receive.
I'm not quite sure what that means. What do you mean?
Well, she was offering to you the account of her young sisters about being abused by their father. But if what she says is correct, through Mr. DeRoy, the committee said, we're not going to take the corroborative evidence that might be available.
I'm not aware of that, Your Honour. I'm sorry.
That's what it amounts to, isn't it? In other words, she says, the committee said, well, they're too young, therefore there won't be corroboration, and therefore the result will be we can't determine the proceedings in BCG's favour. Do you understand?
I understand what you're saying, yes.
Very well.
In your statement, you say that you appeared in court proceedings in Brisbane as a witness for the prosecution. Was that in the first trial or also in subsequent trials?
I think it was in the first.
And not in subsequent trials?
No.
And were you requested or required to give evidence in subsequent trials?
No.
And you referred earlier, you said that you thought that there was, in the criminal trial, there was a witness of another incident, similar incident or abuse, which is what enabled a conviction to be entered in that case.
In the subsequent trials?
Yes.
I believe so, yes.
Well, and that belief is gained from what? From where?
That person coming forward.
But where did you get your information?
Where did I get?
You say you believed someone else had come forward and given evidence in that trial about other abuse by the father.
Yeah.
Where did you get that belief from?
I don't want to mention names, but you have a BCK on the list.
Your statement is true and correct, Mr. Ali?
I do.
I surrender the statement, Your Honour.
We'll make it Exhibit 29-7.
Your Honour, would that be inappropriate?
10 o'clock in the morning. We'll adjourn.
Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.